Hello, family. Enjoy this relaxing moment with SURLEY Tales. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Sophia Wells had always believed in the power of unwavering support. From the day she met Daniel Carter in college, she saw someone who brimmed with ambition and possibilities. He was not just another man trying to find his place in the world. He was a dreamer, a visionary, and she found his confidence infectious. Even when others warned her that Daniel had more charm than substance, she brushed them off. Love, she believed, could conquer all. Their early years together were marked by simplicity and hope. They shared a tiny, one-bedroom apartment with outdated furniture and peeling paint on the walls. Sophia vividly recalled dancing with Daniel in the living room while takeout cartons cluttered their coffee table. He would tell her about his future tech startup, describing every detail as though it were already real. She would listen, mesmerized, convinced that she was in the presence of greatness. When they finally married, Sophia vowed to stand by him through everything. She took the promise seriously, dedicating herself wholeheartedly to his dream. Daniel was not just her husband, he was her partner in ambition, her friend in laughter, and her confidant in late-night brainstorming sessions. She managed the household, paid the bills, and worked 2 jobs so he could focus on building a company that, he promised her, would one day change their lives. Their struggles were far from glamorous. Money was tight, and bills piled up. Friends and family started to question whether Daniel was truly giving it his all or simply letting Sophia shoulder the burdens. But she silenced them with a smile, explaining that the path to success was never easy. Whenever Daniel lost hope, after a failed pitch or a rejected loan application, Sophia would take his hand and say, "We'll make it. We just have to believe." Her reassurance became the backbone of their relationship, anchoring Daniel whenever the weight of disappointment threatened to pull him under. Eventually, after countless sleepless nights and near meltdowns, a breakthrough arrived. An investor saw potential in Daniel's concept and injected a modest sum to get the company off the ground. Sophia was ecstatic. She celebrated by cooking Daniel's favorite meal, rosemary chicken and mashed potatoes, and they toasted the future with cheap champagne. It tasted like success to them, because for once, they felt their long-held dreams were coming to fruition. In the following months, the company truly began to grow. Suddenly, Daniel was in meetings with influential people. There was a buzz around his startup that caught the attention of bigger investors. Each new milestone brought them closer to the life they had always envisioned. Sophia, despite working long hours, never missed an opportunity to support him. She would rearrange her schedule for important events, prepare elaborate dinners for potential investors, and even brush up on industry trends so she could converse knowledgeably at networking parties. But as the momentum increased, Daniel's behavior started to shift in subtle ways. He became more protective of his phone and spent more time out with clients. His compliments for Sophia grew perfunctory, often overshadowed by complaints about how little time they had for themselves. When she mentioned her own aspirations, she once dreamed of opening a small bakery, he would dismiss the idea as a distraction. She told herself he was simply under pressure, that the stress of building a successful business had momentarily hardened him. Yet the signs of deeper trouble became impossible to ignore. Daniel seemed detached, drifting further from the humble, affectionate man she had once married. His once playful texts became curt or non-existent. Intuition gnawed at her, but she avoided the dark corners of her doubt, afraid of what she might discover if she looked too closely. Then came the night that shattered her illusions. Exhausted from her shift, Sophia returned home to find Daniel in his office, texting someone. He jumped when she entered, quickly trying to hide his phone. Her heart sank. She waited until he went to take a shower, then quietly retrieved his phone from the desk. The message she saw, complete with flirtatious winks and promises of a secret rendezvous, took her breath away. Her mind raced. Could it be a misunderstanding, some joke among colleagues? But the evidence was too explicit. The woman, someone named Fiona, wrote about how she missed his touch, how she could not wait for the next getaway. Sophia felt her world tilt, as though the room itself was spinning. A rush of denial mingled with heartbreak. She clutched the phone, tears welling in her eyes. 8 years. 8 long years of unwavering loyalty, love, and sacrifice. And this was her reward? She wanted to scream, to confront him immediately. But a sense of numbness took over, freezing her in place. When Daniel emerged from the shower, toweling his hair dry, he found Sophia standing rigid in the middle of the room. She locked eyes with him, holding his phone in one trembling hand, unable to form the words that would shatter the life they had built. Deep down, she already knew, nothing would be the same after this night. Sophia barely slept after making the discovery. Each time she closed her eyes, the message on Daniel's phone replayed in her mind like a cruel highlight reel. She could hear Fiona's words mocking her, taunting her even. By morning, she felt a hollow ache in the pit of her stomach, a dread that would not subside. She had to confront him. Hiding from the truth was not an option anymore. She found him in the kitchen, sipping coffee, dressed in a crisp shirt for yet another investor meeting. The smell of freshly ground beans clashed painfully with the tension in the air. Swallowing the lump in her throat, Sophia said quietly, "We need to talk." He looked up, annoyance flickering across his features. "About what?" "I'm running late." Her eyes flashed. "Oh, I'm sure you are." She held out his phone, screen unlocked on the incriminating messages. "Who is Fiona? And do not lie to me." For a moment, Daniel's face went blank. Then, a slow, insidious smirk curved his lips. Instead of remorse, Sophia saw arrogance. He glanced at the phone and shrugged. "Sophia, let's be adults. My life is changing, my circle is evolving, and maybe, just maybe, you are not meant for it." Her heart hammered. "You're cheating on me, and that is all you have to say?" She could hardly believe her ears. He chuckled, the sound dark and unsettling. "Look, I appreciate what you've done, taking care of the bills, supporting me. But I have outgrown us. It happens." Tears threatened to spill down her cheeks, but she clenched her fists, determined not to show weakness. "I was there for you when no one else believed in you. I sacrificed everything." He set his coffee down, exhaling impatiently. "And I'll pay you back somehow. But right now, I have a meeting to attend." Sophia felt a wave of disgust roll over her. She could not recall a time she had ever hated someone, but at that moment, hatred was the only word that fit. She watched him grab his keys and stride out the door without so much as an apology. It was the beginning of the end, and she knew it. Days later, she filed for divorce. She expected a messy process. What she did not expect was the full force of Daniel's legal team. He had hired the best attorneys in town, the kind who thrived on confrontation. They twisted the narrative, painting Sophia as a bitter wife incapable of understanding her husband's success. She sat in cold conference rooms while Daniel's lawyers dissected every financial transaction and belittled her contributions to the marriage. They called her unqualified and implied she brought nothing to the table. The heartbreak of betrayal turned into a battle of wills, and Sophia found herself drained by the constant onslaught of legal intimidation. The worst part? She did not have the resources to fight back. While she had worked multiple jobs to keep them afloat, her personal savings were meager. Daniel, on the other hand, had built up a war chest from his blossoming company. He was ruthless, and she was outmatched. At one particularly tense meeting, Sophia locked eyes with Daniel. "Do you really think you built this company alone?" she demanded. "Do you even remember the nights I stayed up, writing emails to potential investors, or the days I spent preparing your presentations?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "It's my name on the documents, not yours. Let's keep this professional." His voice was so cold, it sent shivers down her spine. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a fair settlement, emphasizing her role during the startup's crucial early phase. Yet every attempt was met with derision. Daniel's team insisted she had merely been a supportive spouse, not a true business partner. Her heart sank as she realized that he had meticulously removed any trace of her involvement from official records. In the eyes of the law, it looked like she had contributed nothing. After weeks of demoralizing back and forth, the divorce hearing arrived. Sophia felt a knot in her stomach as she stepped into the courthouse, a place that did not feel like it could ever hold anything resembling justice. The stale air smelled of old wood polish and fear. She clutched her files, though she suspected they would do little to save her from Daniel's systematic dismantling of her life. Indeed, the judge, swayed by carefully crafted evidence, ruled heavily in Daniel's favor. The house was awarded to him. The business assets remained under his name. Even the modest savings in their joint account had somehow evaporated. Standing in the sterile corridors after the ruling, Sophia felt like the ground had fallen out from under her. She wanted to scream that it was not fair, that it was not right. But she had no voice left to cry out. Daniel slipped out of the courtroom surrounded by his lawyers, pausing only to deliver one final, cutting remark. Leaning in close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne, he whispered, "You were never meant for this life anyway." In that moment, the last piece of Sophia's heart cracked. She understood now that the love she had clung to was nothing more than an illusion. The man she had so selflessly supported was gone, replaced by a callous stranger. As she watched him walk away, her rage crystallized into a fierce resolve. She was done crying for Daniel Carter. If there was one lesson she had learned, it was that sometimes the only way forward was to rebuild from nothing. Sophia's life turned into a subdued routine after the divorce. She found a small, dingy apartment on the edge of the city, its chipped walls and faint odor of mold a far cry from the once cozy home she had shared with Daniel. Each morning, she woke up to the sound of neighbors arguing or the rattling of ancient radiators. She would grip the edge of her thrift store bed frame and remind herself, "I survived worse." For a while, anger was her only companion. She felt betrayed not just by Daniel, but by the justice system that had favored him. Embarrassed, she avoided her few remaining friends, unwilling to answer their well-intentioned questions. Determined not to sink further into despair, she sought clarity in isolation. Slowly, the numbness she felt began to thaw, replaced by a burning desire to prove Daniel and the world wrong. She knew the path to redemption would not be quick or easy. Resolute, Sophia returned to waitressing, one of the many jobs she had taken in the past. The work was grueling, the customers sometimes rude, but at least it offered a paycheck. Every tip she earned went into a battered envelope labeled "Future." There were days she could barely stand on her sore feet, but whenever exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, she remembered Daniel's sneering words, "You were never meant for this life anyway." That was all the fuel she needed to push harder. Late nights found her poring over business textbooks from the library. She devoured success stories of entrepreneurs who had risen from impossible circumstances. Names like Oprah Winfrey and Steve Jobs became her silent mentors, teaching her resilience and innovation. Her mind buzzed with ideas, each more daring than the last. Sometimes, she would jot them on napkins during slow shifts at the diner, daydreaming about a future that seemed both exhilarating and terrifying. One chilly evening, while scanning an online forum about startups, she came across an upcoming event titled Women in Tech. It promised workshops, networking sessions, and a chance to pitch ideas to potential investors. Her heart pounded. Could this be the opportunity she needed to finally set her plan in motion? She almost talked herself out of attending, thinking about the cost of the entrance fee. But then she made a brave decision. She used half of her tip money to buy a ticket. That night, she barely slept, alternating between excitement and anxiety. What if nobody listened to her pitch? What if she made a fool of herself? On the day of the event, she arrived at the venue dressed in the only professional outfit she had left, a simple navy blue suit she had worn years ago. It was a bit tight around the shoulders, but it would have to do. With trembling hands, she collected her name badge and stepped into a world she had only glimpsed from the sidelines. The conference hall buzzed with conversations about venture capital, scaling strategies, and cutting-edge technology. For a moment, she felt like an imposter. But as the day progressed, Sophia realized she had knowledge and experience others did not. She had been intimately involved in the early stages of Daniel's startup, even if her name never made it onto the official records. Her insights on investor relations, marketing angles, and efficient resource allocation came from real-life trials. When she attended workshops, she was able to ask targeted, thoughtful questions that impressed even the experienced speakers. She started attracting attention from fellow attendees, people who wanted to know more about her background. During a break, she struck up a conversation with a woman named Claudia Reed, a venture capitalist known for backing women-led businesses. Claudia was sharp-eyed and spoke with deliberate precision. "You seem to know your stuff," Claudia remarked after Sophia outlined her perspective on current market gaps. "If you had the chance, would you start your own company?" During a break, she struck up a conversation with a woman named Claudia Reed, a venture capitalist known for backing women-led businesses. Claudia was sharp-eyed and spoke with deliberate precision. "You seem to know your stuff," Claudia remarked after Sophia outlined her perspective on current market gaps. "If you had the chance, would you start your own company?" Sophia took a breath. It felt like a test. "Yes," she said firmly. "I already have an idea for a platform that connects small businesses with affordable logistics solutions. I have seen how tough it is for startups to handle shipping and inventory without getting crushed by costs." She paused, scanning Claudia's face. "I just need a chance." Claudia studied her for a long moment, then handed her a card. "Give me a call next week. Let's talk." That night, Sophia returned to her cramped apartment, but her heart felt lighter than it had in months. She could barely contain her anticipation. One phone call, one meeting, and everything might change. The next few days crawled by as she refined her pitch, practicing every line in front of her bathroom mirror. When she finally met Claudia for coffee, the conversation was electrifying. They brainstormed. They scribbled ideas on paper napkins until the table was a collage of half-formed plans. At the end of their impromptu session, Claudia said, "I am in. Let's get you some seed funding." Sophia's life flipped in that single moment. The battered envelope labeled "Future" at home now felt symbolic of a bygone era. She would keep it as a reminder of the dark days, proof that she could rise. Over the next few months, she worked with laser-like focus, turning her idea into a tangible plan. She hired a small team of similarly passionate individuals. With Claudia's guidance, she navigated the complexities of incorporation, legal requirements, and initial tech development. Through it all, she remained quiet on social media and refrained from boasting. She wanted her results to speak for themselves. The transformation was not dramatic on the outside. Sophia still lived simply, and she still pinched pennies. Yet inside, she was becoming something entirely different. A woman fueled by purpose, knowledge, and an unbreakable will to succeed. And if Daniel Carter thought he had seen the last of her, he was very much mistaken. 2 years passed in a whirlwind of grueling work, strategic planning, and steady growth. Under Sophia's leadership, the logistics platform, aptly named SwiftConnect, evolved from a half-page idea to a thriving tech startup that garnered headlines. She immersed herself in every aspect of the business, from personally meeting with potential partners to obsessively fine-tuning the user interface with her development team. The relentless hours she once spent supporting Daniel's venture were now channeled into building her own empire. Despite occasional setbacks, a buggy software update, a hiccup in finding reliable shipping carriers, SwiftConnect pushed forward. Sophia encouraged a culture of transparency and problem-solving. Whenever a challenge arose, her small but dedicated team tackled it head-on, gathering around conference tables late into the night. They debated solutions, tested prototypes, and refused to settle for anything less than excellence. Sophia's approach was both nurturing and exacting, a reflection of her own journey. She understood too well how valuable every resource could be when you were climbing from nothing. Gradually, investors took notice. Articles popped up on tech blogs praising SwiftConnect's innovations. The platform's main selling point, streamlining shipping for small businesses, resonated in an e-commerce era where efficient logistics often determined success or failure. Word spread that Sophia Wells was a shrewd negotiator, unafraid to demand fair deals but also committed to mutually beneficial partnerships. Before long, major players in venture capital circles began scheduling calls with her. She fielded questions from people who had once refused to give her the time of day. In hushed circles, some even murmured that Daniel Carter's ex-wife was doing what he never could, balancing rapid growth with ethical, sustainable business practices. One autumn afternoon, she got a phone call that made her heart skip a beat. Forbes wanted to feature her in their annual Rising Stars issue. During the interview, the journalist asked how she had transformed her life so dramatically. Sophia smiled, keeping her tone modest. "Resilience is essential," she explained. "But it also takes a willingness to learn from every failure, from every setback. Nothing in my life was handed to me, I had to earn it all." The photo shoot that followed took place in the lobby of a gleaming skyscraper, one of SwiftConnect's corporate partners. Dressed in a sleek blazer, Sophia exuded the quiet confidence she had honed over countless challenges. The photographer snapped away, capturing an image destined for the magazine cover. In that moment, she felt a subtle shift inside, an acceptance that she was indeed a force to be reckoned with. When the Forbes issue finally hit the stands, her phone buzzed non-stop with congratulatory messages. Claudia called to express her delight. Even old friends, the ones Sophia had lost touch with during her darkest period, reached out in awe. She was the talk of the town, the Cinderella story who had gone from a messy divorce to the helm of a groundbreaking startup. Yet beneath the praise and attention, she remained remarkably grounded. She remembered sleepless nights on a cheap mattress, the smell of mold in her tiny apartment, and the bitterness of Daniel's final taunt. Meanwhile, fate was not so kind to Daniel Carter. Whispers began circulating about irregularities in his financial management. Rumors swirled that his new venture was hemorrhaging funds. In the same social circles where he once gloated about his rising star, he now found himself on the defensive, constantly explaining missed deliverables and lost clients. The new wife he had flaunted so proudly seemed less than enthusiastic about the avalanche of criticism they faced. Sophia tried not to revel in his downfall. She reminded herself that personal growth meant focusing on her own journey, not another's misfortune. But when news emerged that Daniel's once celebrated startup was teetering on the brink of collapse, she could not help but feel a private sense of vindication. She had always known his ambition was fueled by ego rather than genuine vision, and now the cracks in his empire were visible for all to see. The real turning point arrived when a major investor scheduled a crucial meeting to decide whether to inject fresh capital into Daniel's failing company. If the meeting went poorly, he would lose everything. Daniel, desperate, tried to leverage old connections. He reached out to mutual acquaintances, scoured every resource he had left, hoping someone, anyone, would vouch for him. In a twist of cosmic irony, he discovered that the pivotal investor had allied with SwiftConnect on a separate project. Unaware of Sophia's involvement, he still believed he could charm his way into a lifeline. The day of the meeting, Daniel walked into a lavish conference room perched on the 25th floor of a downtown high-rise. The interior glistened with polished marble floors, and a panoramic view of the city served as a backdrop. He was confident. Despite the turmoil, he had always relied on his ability to talk his way out of trouble. After all, he had once convinced Sophia to work multiple jobs to support his dreams. But as the elevator doors opened, he was greeted by a sight that sent a chill down his spine. Sophia Wells seated at the head of a long glass table. She exuded power, poised in a tailored suit, calmly reviewing documents. Two other executives flanked her, each wearing expressions of professional curiosity. For a split second, Daniel stood frozen, the color draining from his face. Sophia lifted her gaze, cool and composed. "Hello, Daniel. Have a seat." Her tone was cordial but distant, mirroring the chasm that now existed between them. In that electrifying moment, the balance of power shifted entirely. He was not facing a meek ex-wife or a supportive spouse he could belittle. He was staring into the eyes of a CEO who had built her own success from the ground up. The subtle tilt of her chin told him everything he needed to know. If he wanted to save his company, he was at her mercy. Daniel's heart pounded as he sank into the conference chair. This was not the reunion he had envisioned. He had hoped to dazzle some anonymous investor with a shiny presentation and his trademark charm, but instead he found himself face to face with the woman he had once cruelly cast aside. The tension in the room felt thick enough to slice with a knife. Sophia remained impeccably professional. She introduced the other executives, Colin and Marcia, both of whom were integral parts of her leadership team. They nodded politely, their expressions unreadable, though Daniel sensed their curiosity. He realized they likely knew every detail of his history with Sophia, if not from her directly, then through the rumor mill. Clearing his throat, Daniel forced a smile. "So, I understand we're here to discuss a potential investment in Carter Innovations." Marcia raised an eyebrow. "Yes, we've reviewed the proposal you submitted. There are quite a few questions we need answered." She glanced at Sophia, yielding the floor to her. Sophia did not hesitate. "Daniel, your company's financial statements paint a concerning picture. High overhead costs, missed milestones, shrinking market share. We need to understand why we should consider a partnership with Carter Innovations when it appears you're on the brink of insolvency." Her voice carried none of the tremors or vulnerability he might have remembered. Instead, it was the cool timbre of a seasoned CEO. He swallowed hard, trying to cling to the scraps of confidence he had left. Every new startup faces obstacles. I'm in the midst of reorganizing operations, streamlining processes, and aggressively seeking new revenue channels. Could you elaborate on that? Colin asked, his tone strictly business. Daniel fumbled through a presentation on his laptop, showcasing slides with glossy images and optimistic projections. But he felt the weight of Sophia's gaze on him the entire time. Once upon a time, he could have spun this narrative brilliantly. Yet now, under her discerning scrutiny, the story unraveled. Gaps in his data, unrealistic assumptions, and vague marketing strategies became glaringly obvious. After a tedious half-hour, he concluded with a forced grin. "So, that's the vision for Carter Innovations. With the right capital injection, we can pivot and reclaim the market." Silence followed. Marcia tapped her pen thoughtfully against the table, glancing at Sophia for direction. Finally, Sophia closed the folder in front of her, folding her hands. "Daniel, I remember a time when your presentations had substance. A time when you believed in something genuine." Her tone was measured, but behind her eyes, there was a spark of something akin to pity, or perhaps a steely sense of retribution. He tried to speak, but she cut him off softly. "The problem here is that your pitch lacks tangible solutions. You talk about pivoting, but you offer no concrete plan. You are asking for our investment to bail you out of a mess, not to fuel innovation." Anger flared in his chest. Did she really think she could lecture him? He was Daniel Carter, the visionary. Yet as he looked around the table, he saw no sympathy on the faces of those who mattered. The irony struck him. The same unwavering support Sophia once provided was now replaced by objective scrutiny. Desperate, he adopted a conciliatory tone. "Sophia, please, let's talk privately. We have history. You know what I'm capable of." She regarded him coolly. "What you are capable of?" "Yes, I remember." Her gaze flickered, reminiscent of old wounds. "But this is business, Daniel, and our personal history does not inspire confidence." He felt his composure slipping. "You know I can turn this around. I just need a break. I gave you—" "Gave me what?" Her voice took on a sharper edge, the first hint of emotion she had shown. Memories of their marriage, his betrayal, and the humiliating divorce must have flashed before her eyes. "Let us be very clear. You never gave me anything but heartbreak and a legal beating in court." Marcia and Colin exchanged glances. The air was fraught with tension. Daniel realized he was losing control of the narrative, and fast. "Look," he pleaded, "I'm trying to salvage my company. If you walk away, hundreds of employees will be affected. I'm not just doing this for me." Sophia's jaw tightened. "Those employees would have fared better if you had managed your business responsibly. Nevertheless, our goal at Swift Connect is to invest in viable opportunities. And from what I have seen, Carter Innovations does not meet our criteria. Not anymore." Her final words landed like a hammer. Daniel felt the room tilt. Everything he had banked on, this meeting, this last shot at redemption, was slipping through his fingers. "You cannot be serious," he mumbled, voice quavering. She closed her eyes briefly, as if steeling herself against any lingering sentimentality. When she opened them, her gaze was set in unyielding determination. This is done. The final blow came when she repeated the words he had once used to destroy her sense of worth. "Oh, Daniel," she said, a faint half-smile on her lips. "You were never meant for this life anyway." In that instant, Daniel felt every door slam shut. Colin and Marcia stood, indicating the meeting was over. Sophia collected her documents, stood gracefully, and walked out without looking back. He remained in his chair, stomach churning, head pounding with the realization of what he had lost. For a moment, he could almost see the ghost of the woman who had once loved him unconditionally, standing in shabby rooms, working odd jobs, sacrificing every personal dream for his success. She had truly loved him, and he had thrown her away, convinced he could do better. Now he saw, with brutal clarity, that she had grown beyond him in every sense. And he was the one left behind. In the months that followed his disastrous meeting with Sophia, Daniel's life spiraled into a series of humiliations. He tried to secure funding elsewhere, but word traveled quickly in the close-knit investment community. Carter Innovations was deemed too risky, and Daniel himself had earned a reputation for being arrogant and reckless. Deals collapsed before they even began. Remaining clients bailed, citing unmet deliverables. His employees jumped ship to competitors, seeking job security and better leadership. At home, or what was left of it, Daniel faced turmoil as well. The lavish condo he had shared with his second wife turned cold and silent. When money became tight, the extravagant vacations, weekly parties, and designer shopping sprees vanished. Tension built between them until his wife finally walked out, leaving behind an empty closet and a note that read, "I did not sign up for this." Oddly enough, her departure did not sting as much as losing Sophia had, perhaps because his second marriage had always been more of a trophy acquisition than a genuine partnership. Unable to keep up with payments, he was forced to sell off assets. The sports car, the limited edition watches, and the fancy condo all went on the market, often at prices that barely covered outstanding debts. He moved into a much smaller apartment, ironically similar in size to the one he had once shared with Sophia in their early days, though it lacked the warmth of shared dreams. His nights became sleepless, haunted by the echo of her voice and the memory of her unwavering gaze when she refused to rescue him. Occasionally, in moments of desperation, Daniel would try calling Sophia. He even drafted long emails, apologizing for his betrayal, insisting he had acted out of fear and immaturity. But each time he hit send, her auto-reply came back, a generic message from her assistant, politely noting that Ms. Wells's schedule was fully booked. No direct response ever followed. His texts went unread or unanswered, trapped in the digital void. He could not resist stalking her online, though she remained reserved on social media. He found the occasional news article or press release praising her and SwiftConnect's latest milestones. Her face on magazine covers, her quotes in high-profile interviews. Each new mention was a reminder of how high she had climbed and how far he had fallen. One evening, stumbling home from a bar where he had tried to drown his sorrows, Daniel spotted a billboard featuring Sophia. It was part of a campaign celebrating women in tech leadership, her face illuminated by bright lights against the night sky. Her expression radiated confidence and determination. He stared at it for a long time, leaning against a lamppost, feeling a strange mix of pride and shame. Pride, because he had once been close to someone so extraordinary, and shame, because he had treated her as disposable. Desperate to talk to her in person, he learned about a prestigious gala she would be attending, a benefit for female entrepreneurs. Daniel managed to get a ticket through a friend of a friend, pulling the last few strings he had left. He showed up in an old suit that felt a size too big, the stress of recent months having taken its toll on his weight and posture. The room was filled with movers and shakers, all dressed in elegant finery, but Daniel felt out of place. He hovered near the edges, searching the crowd until he spotted her. Sophia stood near a group of influential businesspeople, laughing at something one of them had said. She wore a simple yet striking gown, and the aura of self-assurance that surrounded her was almost tangible. For a moment he felt paralyzed. Then, compelled by regret and longing, he moved toward her through the crowd. A few people gave him curious stares, others recognized him and turned away, not wanting to be associated with his downfall. Finally, he was close enough to murmur her name. Sophia. She turned and their eyes locked. He caught the briefest flicker of emotion in her face, a recognition of who he once was. But it passed quickly, replaced by the composed mask of a woman who had moved on. Daniel, she said politely. He cleared his throat, the words tumbling out in a jumbled rush. I was wrong about you. Everything I did, I regret it more than you can imagine. Silence stretched between them. Then she gave a gentle, understanding smile that cut deeper than any harsh insult. I know, she replied, her tone neither triumphant nor forgiving, merely factual. He opened his mouth to say more, but no sound emerged. Maybe he wanted to beg her for forgiveness, or ask if things could have been different. Maybe he wanted to tell her that, deep down, he still believed she was the best thing that ever happened to him. But she turned gracefully, bidding farewell with a polite nod, and walked away to join another group of well-wishers. In that moment, he realized the conversation was over. There would be no second chance, no miracle reconciliation. As the crowd swallowed her up, Daniel felt a hollowness in his chest that no amount of alcohol or denial could ever fill. She had risen like a phoenix from the ashes he had left her in, while he was left to wander the ruins of his own making. And for the rest of his days, he would carry the weight of knowing that he had lost the one person who truly believed in him, long before the world even knew his name. The end. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.